My name is Anmol Mukhe and I am doing my research in actually in Korean studies. I am not in China and not in India. These are here even of Kautilya. I have read monograph of I will be presenting in this paper. So my title is Kautilya and Sunju, a comparative study of political thought in contemporary politics. This paper aims to understand the teaching of Kautilya and Sunju in dominating the leadership of India and China, especially in the strategic culture. The review of literature also shows the similarities of statecraft, especially from the realist perspective, comparing both Sunju Art of War and Kautilya Arthashastra. Well, Sunju defined importance of military and deception as a criteria of foreign policy. Similarly, Kautilya in his Mandala theory, knowing his enemy, or what he called it, Ari, is the way of dictating his foreign policy. So hypothetically also, more anarchy prevails, more the leadership develop their statecraft. International politics is dynamic and friends are enemy are same, according to the traditional philosophy. Well, seeing into the strategic culture, the concept of strategic culture has been as a subset of belief and values of society that relate to the political system, which included views of utility of force or the right of groups or individual, etc. Especially related to Sunju ideas have been well emphasized or applied especially in the military strategies, and it have a 13 chapter or a book. And comparing to Kautilya ideas have been used in the science of politics, which have a 15 chapters or book. But there are the controversy in the historical texts, especially related to historical and literacy work of CZ, who have recorded the Sunju record in 500 BC. And logically, the treaties was signed in that period when Sunju was a general under the leadership of the king of Wu. On the other hand, conclusion arrived after studying literary work or the military development in ancient China that the work was developed around 400 years. That is 100 years later during the Waring state period, 403 to 221 BC. But the eminent historians such as Samuel B. Griffith, who have explained the various arguments, including the history of the PRC, has advanced that have argued that the authorship of Art of War is unsettled. But he agrees that it was not a compilation, but was written by a singularly imaginative individual who had a considerable practice experience in a war. Moreover, the bamboo sleeve excavated in the Yonghe mountain in China provide a version of Sunji treatise, which is somewhat different from the common accepted text, which developed in the Han dynasty, but the authorship is accepted. And similarly in Kautilya also, according to some scholars, they believe that Kautilya was a Brahmin from southern India, but some argue that Kautilya was a Brahmin, but not from southern India, but from Taxila, now in Pakistan. Dandin, yet another ancient scholar, had referred to Dandiniti of Acharya Vishnugupta in his work Dasa Kumara Charitra, where he have mentioned only Vishnugupta and Chanakya in his work, but Kautilya are not mentioned. Similarly, T.R. Troutman, who had made a study of Arthashastra in 1988, he came up with the idea that Chanakya did not have a name called Kautilya. It was different. But Professor Kangle, this widely accepted Professor Kangle argument that Kautilya was from 300 BC and three names belongs to the same individual. And especially in their work also, comparatively, we will find some of the similarities, many similarities related to the strategic culture, especially like Kautilya advocated the use of deception and treachery for winning war. In similar way, Sunju also proclaims that all war is based on deception. Both Sunju and Kautilya emphasize on spies, especially in indirect strategy, that is slow in destruction enemy through harassment, intrigue, deception and assassination of enemy leaders. Both argue that the war should be waged for limited objective and with limited means. Since violence represents the disturbance of a cosmic harmony, it should be kept in a minimum. And Sunju also warns that no state have been benefited from the prolonged war. Similarly, Kautilya also warned Vijigishu that strategic overextension might result to the protracted warfare with one's enemies. Kautilya and Sunju write, whenever possible, victory should be achieved through the diplomatic coercion and forming a grand alliance against the enemy. And especially, seeing from the Chinese tradition, Confucianism philosophy also focused on the policy of using barbarian against barbarian. Similarly, Kautilya also teach the same way with the concept of Vedniti, that destroying the kind of intellectual groups and all. So relating to these things to the contemporary politics and critique, art of war was used from before, from Lang dynasty, from 6th century BC to Tang dynasty to Song dynasty, and even to the Manchu dynasty. It was well developed through the work of Song Xingyan. But from the 18th century, especially the Europeans, they started to develop and they started to translate this art of war into their own language. And as we know that this art of war, they have used particularly for the military strategy. And PLA had briefly collaborated with, like in the past also, PLA had collaborated with the KMT forces to repel Japanese invasions. Same they did with fighting against the UN forces in Korea. Because of that, PLA was not just an army. PLA have given an ideological commitment to the CPC. In the same way, Sun Tzu taught his subordinates. National Defense University Press produced materials in 2014 that says that PLA Army Command Academy in Nanjing motto are derived from Chapter 5 of Art of War, which has use of normal force to engage, use of extraordinary force to win. American scholar like J.P. London scholar pointed out that Chinese concept of cyber attack is based on that phrase. BBC will explain more about cyber attack and cyber warfare later. Other phrases are all warfare are based on deception. These are commonly used these are used maximum time. Even the concept of Tangjia 14 character, hide your capabilities and bide your time, and Mao Zedong characteristic of strategic secrets such as when an enemy advances, we will retreat. When an enemy stays, we will disturb them. When an enemy is tired, we will strike them. When an enemy retreats, we will chase them, are very similar to the Sun Tzu teaching. When he concentrates, prepare against him. Where he is strong, avoid him. Attack where he is unprepared. Sally out where he does not expect you. In the Art of War teaching in Chapter 1. Moreover, all Chinese military personnel memorize Sun Tzu. And it would be right to say, as an academician, that it is possible to say that Chinese strategy is based on art of war. Because to understand Chinese strategy, it is necessary to understand Sun Tzu's importance of military, which is revealed in the National Chinese Defense, which is published every 2 years. Even in China National Defense in 2012, it says that China will never seek hegemony. But when we will see the report of Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessment and R&D by 2020, that China will be well on its way to having the means to achieve its first island chain policy, which we saw in 2013 May. Chinese newspaper discussed about the position of Okinawa. So due to the declaration of China that China will never seek hegemony, this can be seen from the Chinese perspective as well as from the Kautilyan perspective that China's strategy is clearly deceptive. Because what Kautilya suggests us is to look into the intention so that you will know your enemy. Former Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh, says that we can choose our friend, but we can't choose our neighbor, because neighbor are pre-given or a given reality. Similarly, Kautilya, in his most famous work of Mandala theory, he says that immediate neighbor are considered an enemy, but any state on the other side of the neighboring state is regarded as an ally, or enemy is kind of a friend. So Kautilya's, but the thing is, Kautilya Arthashastra is written more in the Hindu philosophy, where there exists a continuous tension between the Dharma Yuddha and a Kata Yuddha, Dharma for a right, for a just war, or Kata Yuddha for a evil. So two terms might roughly translated as a just and an unjust war respectively also. Indian tradition like Sun Tzu also believe in use of deception and treachery for winning war, because we can see during the time of Cold War, when the two blocs were there, then India developed a concept of non-alignment movement, but they were trying to achieve their goal through the deceptive, through the use of deception, and India was more allied toward the Soviet Union. Soviet downfall led to Indian deception failure in their calculation. Because defecting Indian strategic culture is that Indian tradition have not utilized the Arthashastra theory in practice. Comparing to China are galloping ahead with Confucius centers. In their attempt to go beyond European history in theorizing IR, the Chinese have launched the Chinese Journal of International Politics, where they freely and openly they debate with the Western scholar like Barry Boozan, etc. And Dr. Gautam rightly remarks that Indian university system does not facilitate any study of military history, especially like university like JNU and DU. There is no courses of strategic theory and military history. There is no structural teaching of military history in the National Defence Academy. At the Indian Military Academy, there is no professor or war studies. Due to the absence of archival work, academics are discouraged to pursue diplomatic or strategic and war-related topics. Even a historical map like those of the Sino-Indian border in any case are very rare. And moreover, 1962 war in Arunachal have not recorded any oral history of the people, similarly in a Ladakh case, etc. Due to the absence of knowledge and the competition in philosophy, there is also a huge gap, there is a huge gap in the language barrier. So for example, we know that China was well known for keeping the history. But comparing to India, Sanskrit is neglected in India due to lack of jobs, sponsorship and patronage. One major weakness is that no reference to any sutra is given by the author. Indian belief in caste politics, which was there in Kautilya Arthashastra, because while choosing a military general also, he used to choose from obviously Kshatriya, but as well as Sudra and Vaishya, because they were a farmer and they used to work hard. And this have affected the relation in the higher and the lower caste. Intellectually, Indian academics are under undue weight of foreign academic hegemony. Today, the policy community India needs Kautilya wisdom as an alternative, but his idea resides more on the oral tradition of Sanskrit. Sanskrit scholars are well versed in sutras, but they are in the field of language or cultural studies, but not in the decision making or in the statecraft.